Thanks for staying with us on the conversation. We continue with situations in Ghana where John Dramani Mahama, a former president of Ghana, has been selected as the flag bearer for the National Democratic Congress, NDC, Ghana's largest opposition party, for the upcoming 2024 presidential election. The selection took place after a closely contested election involving over 355,000 NDC party delegates at 401 voting centers across the country. The voting process began on Saturday and concluded on Sunday. Mahama emerged as the clear winner, securing 297,603 votes, which accounted for 98.9% of the total votes. His primary competitor, former Kumasi Mayor Kojo Bonsu, received 3,181 votes, representing 1.1% of the total.
Another candidate, Kwabena Tufo, a former central bank governor, withdrew from the race on Friday, alleging that the party was not committed to conducting a transparent and fair election. Previous John Dramani Mahama previously served as president of Ghana from 2012 to 2017 and is now the chosen candidate of the NDC. He launched his campaign in March with the aim of reclaiming the presidency. The ruling National Patriotic Party has scheduled its own primaries for November 2023, while the presidential election is set to take place on the 7th of December next year. Now, joining me for this important discussion, we have Malik Basintel, Deputy National Communications Officer of the National Democratic Congress in Accra, Ghana. A warm welcome to you, Malik, and thanks for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Now, former President John Dramani Mahama won the primaries with an overwhelming majority, 98%. That is very high. It's quite a remarkable number. How do you see his chances in next year's elections? And can you take us through the events that led to the elections that produced John Mahama as the candidate of the NDC?
Well, thank you once again, and good evening from Ghana to the rest of the world. I think that it's impressive. It instills a level of confidence and hope in the party that President Mahama has been largely accepted by the base of the party. Elections in Ghana are only built or are won after building upon your core base. And so if you have 98.9% of your core base voting for a particular person, it simply means that virtually the entire base of your party has decided to rally behind one candidate. And we all know that elections are won on building on your core base. And so we will need a percentage of floating voters to add onto what we have as a party in order to be victorious in the upcoming election. And so once we are confident of 98.7% of our core base, we must be confident that it's good news for the party, and we must be hopeful of assuming office as a government in 2025. Mind you, out of these 98.9%, the entire party's delegation is the entire party's membership is over 5 million. And to win an election in this country, you need a little above 5 million per the current registration to emerge victorious. In the last election, all political parties, the two major political parties, hit 6 million plus. And so if about 98.9% of the representation of this 5 million population have decided to rally behind one candidate, it simply tells us that we will need a little bit of the floating voter population to rally behind the traditional party base in order to emerge victorious. And so we are confident, we are inspired by the numbers, that voted in line or in presenting President Mahama as our flag bearer. Again, aside what the candidate will have to do to emerge victorious in the 2024 election, we would also have a comparison of track records. And so for about 98.9% to rally behind one particular candidate. It simply means that adding on our track record, we can emerge victorious in the upcoming election. And so if we are fortunate that the man whose track record is going to be used is the man going to be on the ballot paper. And so selling such a candidate makes our work easier. If you come to Ghana, you realize that major construction projects, major health facilities like the Ridge Hospital, like the Tamale Teaching Hospital Phase 2, and other facilities were constructed by this same President Mahama. If you go to the educational sector, we had what we called the E-block system. It was meant to beef up primary and secondary education in this country, largely. Over 85 of them were completed before the exit of office. They were done by this same President Mahama. You come to how our electricity challenges were resolved in this country, popularly called Dumso. I mean, as of the time we were assuming office in 2008, generational capacity was a little above 1,000. And at the peak season in this country, we needed about 2,800 to beef up the electricity sector in this country. This same John Mahama, out as a result of his vision and hard work, brought in power batches. We had a car power of 250 megawatts. We had a Mary of 200 megawatts coming on board. And as a result of all these private sector involvement, our megawatts was beefed from over 1,000, from a little above 1,000 to 5,000 megawatts. The power crisis in this country that was called Doomso was solved by this same man. And so, I mean, comparing track records in this country to what the current government, going into the figures, we were doing a manufacturing sector of 7.6%. This government is doing a paltry 5.6%. We expanded our electricity sector by 84%. This government is doing a paltry 0.6%. We did a 1.6% in the construction sector. This government is doing less than 0.1% in the construction sector. If you come to agricultural sector, in fact, in 2001, when this same President Mahama was the head of economic management team, we chalked a 1 million ton in cocoa production. This government hasn't even attained 700,000, not alone chalking same 1 million
Malik,
ton.
with all what you've said about Mahama, I mean, why did he lose in the previous 2 elections? If you're saying so many things about the track record that Mahama or what that he did in Ghana, what happened that he did not win the last elections which he contested in, if he's such a wonderful candidate that you have positioned himself as?
In 2012 and 2017.
In the 2016 election,
and 2020.
The records of President Mahama was not being compared to the records of the flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party, which was then Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, because he hadn't held office as president of the republic before. And so people were comparing President Mahama's records to what they felt should be done in the country. And people were comparing President Mahama's records to the numerous promises by the current president of the Republic of Ghana, then flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party. But in the 2024 election, people have started from today, and in fact, even before the 2020 elections, comparing the track record of President Mahama to the current government. And so at least we have two things now to compare. We are comparing a man who was president before to a government that is in power before. And it is for no reason that in the 2020 elections, 500,000 more people accepted that the NDC government did better than the current government, and so voted in line with the NDC and President Mahama as our flag bearer. So if you compare the results of the 2016 election, where we lost the election by 1 million votes, and for the first time in the history of this country, where a certain government loses about 500,000 of what they won with in the previous election after their first term in office, it simply tells you and I that we are appreciating, and the people of this country are beginning to have a very fair comparison between these two people. And so we lost the 2016 election because there was no standard of comparison. People were comparing what President Mahama did to their assumptions and to their expectations.
Thank you very much, Malik. You've made your point known, Malik. I would like to bring in Mawuli Dake into the conversation, a Pan-Africanist, the CEO of Africa Group Consult in Accra, Ghana. One welcome to you, Mawuli. The NDC has held their primaries, and former President John Mahama has emerged as the flag bearer. The current ruling New Patriotic Party will have their primaries in December. Looking at the last, the presidency, the 2 terms of incumbent President Nana Akufo-Addo, how would you assess his administration And regardless of who the new patriotic party, who emerges as their flag bearer when they conduct their primaries in December, what are the chances of NDC in next year's elections?
Great. Great to join you this afternoon from Accra once again. That is $1 million question. In terms of, we can have our projections based on the reality and our observations on the ground, but there are some facts that cannot be denied. One is that Ghanaians, for a very good reason, rejected John Mahama's presidency and opted for Nana Akufo-Addo's presidency back in 2016, based on what John Mahama had offered in the prior 4 years, and in comparison to the big promises that Nana Akufo-Addo was offering Ghanaians. Unfortunately, as a matter of fact, I'm sad to say that we did not get what we were promised. We were promised maybe Gucci or something, and then we ended up with something else. So it's a big disappointment for most Ghanaians, including members of his own political party. He had a huge opportunity and a lot of goodwill to take Ghana to the next level. Unfortunately, we have taken steps backward in many regards, not just the economic. I'm more even worried about our retrogression in the democratic arena, in the governance arena, in human rights arena. So the part that bothers me is that based on his abysmal performance and Nana Akufo-Addo's failure, it will make us Ghanaians think that they do not deserve better than Mahama. It's a fact that Mahama may not be as bad as Nana Addo, but we also know his performance. He may not abuse power as much as Nana Addo has, but still, unless he's offering something radically different from what he offered in his first term as president, I will still maintain that Ghana deserves better.
What about a third horse situation like we saw in Nigeria? Because Nigeria elections are typically a two-horse party, and then we saw the emergence of the Labour Party. Do you see any of such happening in Ghana?
Yes, there is a lot of conversation happening around that. Actually, there is some things going around the formation of a Labour Party in Ghana. There is hunger, there's thirst for that kind of a third party, but it's also something we have experienced every election cycle. People clamor for a new third option, and when it comes to election, they run back to NDC and MPP. So I know that it is possible for a third party, but considering the amount of work that it will require to make it viable, I don't yet see that from any angle, but there's a lot of clamoring for a third party. I just don't know how easily this can be achieved in 2024.
Okay, Malik, I don't know if you heard from Mawuli. He said so many things about Mahama, quite contradictory from what you said. And we're seeing another candidate there that would have been, or that others would have said, probably he might also have had the better option. That's Kwabena Dufo. And he said that he stepped out of the contest, saying that the elections were not free and fair, and that the party is not ready for a free and fair election. So are there still contradictions within your party, or is all just fair and going well with the fact that Mahama has been considered as a candidate?
Yeah, I think you cannot ascertain a free and fair election until the election has been conducted. And so if he assumed the election was not free and fair when we hadn't conducted the election, then I don't know what basis he's using in his conclusion. But before the elections, I know he had an issue with a photo album. And we thought that it wasn't an issue enough for him to complain bitterly about, because the election was supposed to be run with a delegate list. And that delegate list was given to him as early as 16th of April. more than 1 month to the election day. And so if that delegate list was given to him and the elections is to be conducted with that delegate list, I don't see why there should be any issue with a delay in a photo album. That notwithstanding, the photo album was brought in by the National Executive Committee to complement what the delegate list will be used for. And so in the delegate list, you may not have the photos of all the delegates that are going to partake in the election, but in the photo album, you have their pictures. And so Party A cannot vote on behalf of Party B. And so the pictures were just meant to show whose name, whether the name in the register corresponds with who is coming to vote. And the plan B to that was that anybody who is coming to vote should come with a party ID. And so even in the absence of the photo album, you could use any national ID to prove the identity of the person before the person votes. And so
Hello, Malik, are you there? Okay, quickly, before we wrap up this conversation, and I'll appreciate it if you could do it in less than a minute, because we'll fast run out of time. Mawuli, what are the issues on the front burner for Ghanaian electorate? What do they want to see in their new president?
Yes, our country is in crisis. The one that is most visible to people is the economic crisis. There's no doubt that we are going through an unprecedented crisis economically. So that is the number one that people readily talk about. They want to see improvement in their living conditions. They want to see improvement in the economy. They want to see improvement in our performance as a society. But beyond that, there are other key important issues. I think that the current administration has done tremendous damage to governance and our democratic institutions and practice. That would require some work to restore. Just a few minutes before this interview, President Mahama gave his victory address, where he made some promises on that front. He talked about corruption. He made a big promise to ensure that currently dual citizens are not allowed to participate at certain levels.
I really wish we had more time on this conversation, Mawuli, but we have to go at this time. Thank you very much, Mawuli Dake, Pan-Africanist and CEO, Africa Group Consult in Accra, and also Malik Bazentale, Deputy National Communications Officer of the National Democratic Congress. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of the program.
Thank you.